The holiday season is upon us, and like many crafters this time of year, I have been struck with the hubristic impulse to hand-make gifts for all of my loved ones. Making presents by hand really lets you tailor each gift to the recipient, and lets you show how much love and care you have for them. And it can be cheaper. But however am I to manage creating beautiful, thoughtful, and well-made gifts for my friends and family on top of my already hectic workload? I thought to myself, but then I checked my calendar and I realized my next upload date is the day after Christmas, so I could show the process of how I made all of these gifts without spoiling anything for anybody. And in a way, that's given me the greatest gift possible. Free content. So join me today as I try out a variety of different crafts and art styles to create gifts for my friends and family. So the first gift that I want to work on in this video is actually not a Christmas gift at all. It's a graduation gift for one of my best friends. She is graduating with her master's degree in occupational therapy this December, so I want to make her something nice to celebrate that. I wanted to make something that kind of ties in to her whole school experience, just to be a little bit on the theme. So like occupational therapy is of course like related to like the human body. You could tell I have an art degree, but you know, like different body structures like muscles and bones and stuff. And the school that she went to, their mascot is an alligator. So I'm going to be making her a little purse that has a little embroidered alligator skeleton. I actually finished the embroidery the other day. So for the pattern, I worked that out in Photoshop. I took a few reference images of alligators and alligator skeletons and kind of like puzzle piece them together to create something that I liked, and then I printed that out and then transferred that onto some wash away stabilizer and then basted that onto my fabric and then did the embroidery on top of that. It's a pretty simple pattern. I did a backstitch fill for the bigger areas like the skull and the pelvis, and then a regular backstitch for the smaller details like the ribs and everything. I washed out the stabilizer. I'm realizing now I need to wash it again because there's still some bits with the pen ink. It's just going to be a real simple rectangular bag. The base is going to be this black taffeta, and then I want to do the lining in a red satin as just kind of like a little surprise pop of color in there. So I'm going to go wash out the last little bits of stabilizer that I need to get out of this, and then I'm going to start assembling the bag. I cut out my lining pieces and added a zippered pocket on the inside of the bag. Then I made some short fabric loops to attach the strap hardware to the bag, and I sewed them to the ends of the zipper. I stitched both the lining layer and the outer layer to the zipper, then sewed up the two layers separately, leaving a gap in the lining to turn it right side out. Then I made a strap and clipped it to the bag. I added a red teardrop bead to the zipper pull as a final touch, and that finished off the first gift. With the first gift done, I wanted to try and get a bit more in the holiday spirit and put up some decorations. I've been seeing a ton of pictures of people using paper chains as Christmas decorations, and I think it has a really nice cozy vibe, plus they're super easy to make, and I have a bunch of construction paper lying around. So I set to work cutting my paper into strips and then gluing them into paper chains. I used hot glue to start, which worked for the most part, but some of my paper had a bit of a smooth finish, so the glue didn't want to hold. Eventually I switched to staples, which didn't look as nice, but was the easiest option. I also made some little flower or star things out of the tiny scraps of paper I had left, plus some bigger origami paper stars. I attached them to the paper chains with some string, then I could begin hanging them. I wanted to create a sort of chandelier thing on my ceiling fan. Masking tape worked fine on the metal and wood parts of the fan, but not on the glass. Then I tried using museum putty, which worked for a bit, but eventually I just added more paper rings to connect the center chain to 2 of the outer ones, which stayed in place just fine with the tape. I added some swags radiating out on the fan blades, and used the leftover paper to make a chain at the top of the door frame. So the next gift that I want to work on is a t-shirt for my brother. I have a specific design in mind, but it requires a little bit of backstory. So my brother and his partner have a dog. She's very sweet. Her name is Athena. She's a Jack Russell Terrier, and she is a gremlin. A very sweet and loving gremlin, but a gremlin nonetheless. So I was visiting them over the summer, and they got Athena some sort of fancy dog treat from a fancy dog treat booth, and she was up on the couch eating it, and I took a video of it because she just looked so creaturely, and from that video I got this still, which is the perfect image, frankly. So I want to put this image onto a t-shirt for my brother. I've already got the artwork prepared. I took the picture into Photoshop and put a halftone filter over it, which makes the image out of all these little dots. I followed a tutorial to do this just to get the best possible effect, so I'll link that below if you're interested. So then I took that halftone image into Illustrator so I could convert it from a raster image into a vector, because that's what you need to cut things out on the Cricut. I'm going to be using my Cricut to cut out a stencil for this. So I cleaned that up a little bit in Illustrator and then added some text that says Daddy's Little Princess, because she is. And so this is the final design. I find it so funny how like metal and scary this is, but it's just like my brother's goofy little dog, and it says Daddy's Little Princess. It just makes me very happy. The plan for this is to do some reverse dyeing, which is when you use a bleach solution onto a dark fabric to bleach out a design, as opposed to like screen printing where you're putting ink on top of a fabric. You're basically staining the image into the fabric. So I've got some black t-shirts. I went ahead and got 2 just in case something goes wrong. So for the stencil, I'm going to cut it out of freezer paper. This is a really good material for stencils for fabric. It's super cheap. You can find it at basically any grocery store in the US. So I'm gonna get the stencil cut out. It's probably gonna take a while to like weed it out and get it ready to iron on. Then I'll put it on the shirt and we can start with the reverse dye. First, I cut my freezer paper down to fit on the Cricut mat. If you're doing this yourself, you want to make sure the shiny side of the freezer paper is facing up on the mat, but you need the shiny side down when you put the stencil on the fabric, so you need to mirror your image before you cut it. You can make stencils out of freezer paper without a Cricut. You can cut it by hand with an X-Acto knife. The Cricut just makes it a lot faster and more precise. Even with the faster cutting method, this stencil took 45 minutes to cut, but once it was done, I could carefully weed out all the bits I didn't need and then apply the stencil to the shirt. You place the freezer paper shiny side down on your fabric, and using a pressing cloth and an iron set on low heat, you fuse the stencil to the fabric. Freezer paper has a thin plastic coating on one side, so I'm basically melting it onto the shirt. This gives a good seal for stenciling, but will still peel off the fabric easily without leaving any residue. Now that the stencil is ready, I can get everything set up for the bleaching. I put cardboard in the shirt to prevent the bleach from soaking through to the back. I have a 50-50 bleach and water solution in a spray bottle, which is designated for only bleach to prevent cross-contamination. I've also made a neutralizing bath to stop the bleach from bleaching when it gets to a point that I like. It's just 10 parts water and 1 part hydrogen peroxide. Now seems like a good time for the obligatory don't mix chemicals warning unless you are absolutely sure it is safe to do so. Certain combinations can be very dangerous, so please be careful. Also a good time to note that I'm wearing gloves and working outside in a well-ventilated area. In addition to the bleach spray and the peroxide bath, I have a bucket of water to rinse the shirt out in the end. With everything prepped, I sprayed the shirt with the bleach solution, making sure everything was well covered but not soaking and bleeding past the stencil. It's important to use natural fiber fabric for reverse dye. 100% cotton is best, but you can get away with a cotton poly blend. I've done it before, just make sure that it's mostly cotton. I let the bleach sit for about 8 minutes. If it goes for too long, the bleach can eat through the fabric and make holes, so I was being very cautious. At that point, I moved the shirt to the peroxide bath, let it soak for a few minutes, at which point the stencil peeled off, but it was no longer needed. Then I rinsed it in the water, and once it was dry, I could see the design. And I didn't like it. The bleach did not work as well as I wanted, there was very little contrast, and all the detail just merged together into a vague blob. So I modified my artwork to be a lot cleaner, with more solid areas without the halftone dots, and cut a new stencil, which went much faster, only 15 minutes with the simplified design. Then I repeated the whole process again. This time I let the bleach sit longer for about 20 minutes, and I put it in direct sunlight since heat can speed up the bleaching reaction. Though this also dried it out, so maybe not the best move. Round 2 of bleach definitely helped, but it was still not right. So I cut another stencil, and this time I just sponged on some acrylic paint mixed with fabric medium to clean the image up. By this point I had remembered that bleach can expire, so I checked the date on my bottle, but I couldn't read it since it was mostly worn off. So unconfirmed, but it doesn't bode well. I'm still not totally thrilled with how the shirt came out. I think the look of stencil number 2 on the shirt is closer to what I was picturing, but it would be pretty difficult to get that look with the resources and techniques I have available. In the end, I still think it looks cool. It's kind of hard to tell what the image is, but I don't really mind that. It makes the inside joke even more insidery. All that matters is that my brother likes it, and he is morally obligated to love everything I make by virtue of being my brother. So, it's perfect. So next on my list is my dad, who is kind of notoriously difficult to get gifts for. He's the kind of person who will just buy something for himself if he wants it. So you have to think of something that he would want, but has not gotten for himself. So in order to get an idea for him, I did a little light snooping around his work from home office space. Just a quick cursory look to see if I could find anything that might spark an idea. And I did notice he likes to keep some toothpicks on hand at his desk, but right now they're just loose in a pile sitting on like the base of his monitor, so I figured I could make him a little toothpick holder and something nice he could use all the time. And he's also really into like nature and birds, especially at the moment. His desk has a window with a view of their bird feeders, so he like can watch them all the time and see their antics. Apparently the woodpeckers are the main characters. The little downy woodpeckers like to get seeds and hide them in the tree trunk, but then the bigger pileated ones come and steal their seeds, so there's a lot of drama going on. So what I'm thinking is a little toothpick holder that looks like a little hollowed out tree trunk, and then a little woodpecker sitting on the side. I want to make this out of polymer clay, and as a base I've got a little tiny glass bottle. It's just the right size for a little handful of toothpicks, and I can sculpt around this. You can put glass in the oven for the temperatures that you bake polymer clay at, so that will be safe. And then for the base I have a couple little metal washers to go on the bottom. I worry that the holder is going to be really light and really easy to knock over as you're reaching to get a toothpick out, so I think adding the washers into the base will give it just a little bit more weight and make it a little bit more stable. So that is the plan. Now we get to see if the polymer clay that I have on hand is still any good. I start out by forming an armature out of tinfoil. I stack the washers at the bottom for a stable base and set the glass bottle on top at a slight angle. I scrunch the tinfoil up around everything to secure it in place. With the understructure ready, I could begin sculpting. Luckily, my polymer clay was still good, so there were no emergency Michael's visits for now, but I had forgotten that this clay had glitter mixed in. I was a little worried about how that would work. My dad's not the glitteriest person that I know, but it ended up working out just fine in the end. I covered the whole base in a layer of clay and then started cutting away little bits of clay to create a rough, whittled wood sort of texture. When cutting the clay, my knife would often catch the individual glitter particles and drag them through the clay, leaving these teeny tiny gouge marks, which I actually really liked. They added to the hand-carved wood look that I was going for. I followed the same process for the woodpecker. I roughly sculpted the general shape of the bird and then refined it by carving bits away. I kept the bird and the tree separate right up until the very end, since it would have been impossible to do anything on the front underside of the bird with just a tiny gap to work in. I figured out where I wanted the woodpecker to sit on the tree and added some wire to the bird and corresponding holes on the tree to reinforce the connection. Then the clay could be baked, and once cool, I could start painting. I kept the paint job pretty simple, a medium brown for the tree with a little dry brushing for some texture. For the bird, I tried to follow the markings of a pileated woodpecker. It's not 100% exact, but I'd say it's pretty heckin' close. Or pretty peckin' close. Anyway, I sealed the paint with a clear coat, and then I attached the bird to the tree with some E6000. Next is something much more in my wheelhouse. I'm going to be making a patchwork tote bag for my sibling-in-law. I found this tea towel at the thrift store for like $2. It's in great condition. It has this super pretty tarot card design printed onto it, which is very much their vibe. So I'm going to do this as one side of the bag, and then for the other side I'm going to do some patchwork. I've pulled out a few fabric scraps that fit the color scheme. I'm going to be using this pinkish reddish fabric for the lining. So yeah, I'm just going to be making a nice, simple, sturdy patchwork tote bag. Are you the eepy baby? Are you the eepy little baby? He's an eepy little baby. Let's look at the eepy baby. He an eepy baby. Eepy baby. The eepiest of babies. I started by seam ripping open the hemmed edges of the tea towel and pressing out the creases. Then I tried to remove these little metal eyelets from the top corners. I had no idea why there would be eyelets in a tea towel, so I started to wonder if the thrift store had mislabeled it. I looked up the brand name that was on the tag and I found the listing for this item, and it's actually meant to be a mini wall tapestry, so that explains the eyelets. But then I noticed that the product photos looked a bit different than the actual item that I had in my hands. Pictures had more detailed illustrations, more variation in the weight of the line art, bigger, sturdier looking grommets, and I started to get suspicious. So a quick reverse image search later, and yep, these photos came from Urban Outfitters. This other company had just traced their artwork. Normally I would feel bad about using a knockoff version with stolen art, but considering Urban Outfitters seems to think that's a totally fine and cool thing for them to do to other artists, I don't think there's really an issue. Anyways, those eyelets popped right out, probably because this was a super cheap knockoff, but with the tapestry prepped, I cut out all the other pieces that I would need. Some long strips for the sides and the straps, a duplicate of everything for the lining, and a pocket bag. I did a zippered interior pocket for this bag, just like I did for the alligator purse. I realized I didn't really explain how to do this on the first bag, and I'm still not going to do it here, but I will link a tutorial in the description. I added the pocket into one of the lining pieces first, and then jumped to the patchwork. I cut a template from some freezer paper, yes, left over from the t-shirt stencil, and used that as a guide to cut out a whole bunch of diamonds. Then I could start sewing the diamonds together into a motley pattern, which I immediately did wrong on literally the first two pieces, so I had to seam rip on bias cut wall because I was using that for some reason. But once I had the hang of it, I sewed the diamonds into long strips. And then after pressing the seams and evening out the edges, I sewed those two strips into a block. I evened out the edges of the patchwork, and then I could finally begin constructing the bag. I used one long strip of fabric to form the bottom, sides, and strap of the bag, so I just sewed those strips into a big ring, and then sewed on the tapestry and patchwork panels along the edges, leaving the top open. I did the same with the lining layer, and then put the two together. I sewed them right side together along one half of the opening, turned them right side out, did some decorative top stitching, and closed the opening with a slip stitch. Okay, so the final gift that I'm going to be making is a stocking for my mom. Growing up, everyone in my family had a homemade personalized stocking, and I'm pretty sure my mom made them all. I know she definitely made mine, and she used to have one too, but at some point it got damaged or lost or something, so she doesn't have it anymore, and she's been using just like a generic store-bought stocking for the past few years. And yes, my family still does stockings for Christmas. It's basically just an excuse for everyone to get a big bag of candy and snacks, so like, what's not to love? So I want her to have a personalized handmade stocking too. Her favorite color is green, which is very lucky because that's my favorite color too, so that means I have a bunch of materials already on hand that I can use. I'm going to be using this dark green satin as the base, and I want to do a bunch of embroidery and beading on this and make it very fancy schmancy. And I've already started working on this one, actually before everything else. I've been working on this one the whole time, just because I knew the embroidery was going to take me so long. For the embroidery, I did a split stitch in light green to create this diamond grid pattern. Then I added some lazy daisy flowers at each intersection of the grid, and finally some little white stars at the center of each diamond. I left a big open area in the middle of the design for a big beaded letter B, my mom's initial. I did this as an applique, so I traced out the shape of the B onto some felt. With the design traced out, I began filling it with gold bugle beads. When the beading was done, I covered the backs with fusible interfacing to lock in all the threads and hopefully avoid losing any beads when I trimmed away the excess felt. Then the applique could be tacked onto the stocking. To cover the edges of the felt that were still visible, I added green seed beads all around the edges of the bee. And once that was completely done, I realized I hated it, so I unpicked all of that stitching. Thank God I used a different thread color than what I used to attach the applique, and redid the whole outer edge with gold bugle beads. But that still didn't complete the beading, because I also added some pearls to the center of each embroidered flower. That finally finished the decoration stage, and now I could cut out all of the other pieces. I cut the back of the stocking from the same green satin, the lining from a matching dark green cotton, and a cuff out of a dark green velvet. I made a little tube of satin to act as the hanging loop at the top of the stocking. I stitched that into the side seam of the outer layers of fabric, and then swiftly realized that my placement of the hanging loop would not work because the top edge of the stocking is going to be folded over for the cuff. So I ripped that out and restitched that bit of the seam. I'd figure out the best place for that later, so then I removed the basting stitches that outlined the embroidery, trimmed back the seam allowances, clipped the curves, and turned the stocking right side out. Next, I sewed the velvet cuffs to the cotton lining layer, refusing to put on the machine's walking foot out of sheer spite, and suffering greatly as a consequence. Then I sewed the lining pieces together, capturing the hanging loop in the velvet cuff section. See, I figured it out. Then the two layers could be bag-lined together, turned out in a grotesque, festive birthing situation, and then finished with a little bit of hand sewing. Okay, that is it. They're all done, and I am ready for a Christmas break and a long winter's nap, perhaps. I'm not planning on taking a break from uploading, to be clear. I'm just gonna force myself to chill for a couple days and like bake some cookies or something. I'm still planning on uploading a video in 2 weeks, and I have a lot of ideas for other projects that I want to tackle in the new year, so if you would like to see those, you could click subscribe. I would love to have you. I'm very grateful for all of you. I really want to say thank you to everyone watching, not just this video, but all of my videos this year. You might have noticed that I've been uploading a lot more in the past few months, and that's because I'm kind of doing this full time now. Not kinda, I am doing this full time, which is, you know, kind of scary, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it, and I would like to continue doing it, and I can only do that because of you guys watching. So thank you so much for watching. It really means a lot to me, and thank you especially to everyone on Patreon who supports me over there. I could not be doing this without you guys. Thank you for continuing to fund my beading habit. And an extra special thank you to those in the Magnanimous Maelstroms tier: Obi Nick Kenobi, Evelyn, Bear Hardy, and Perfect Primrose. The link to my Patreon will be down in the description if you would like to join these lovely folks, but if not, that is totally cool. Just watching these videos and leaving a like and a comment is still supporting the channel. But that is it for today and for this year, so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Happy holidays, whatever it is you celebrate, and I'll see you next year. Goodbye!